So as I mentioned, my name is Michelle Pico, and I am a program director at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And we have had the killer whale research and conservation program. This will be in its second year. So we've only been able to offer this program for 2 years now. And so this is kind of a new group of grantees, and I encourage you to kind of get to know me, and I really like to get to know you as well so that we can continue to fund some really good projects together. Today we're going to cover 3 main categories of information. One, I'm going to go over the RFP. So I hope everybody's had a chance to read it in lots of detail, but assuming that you may not have had time to really look at it in depth, we're going to go over some of the main elements of that. Then we're going to go through the full proposal and look at touch points where we know people have had problems in the past, and then, as I mentioned before, we will open it up for questions. So I will open it up for any written-in questions here, any written-in questions at the end of this, and then this will be open for anybody to just over the phone. Okay? Quick slide about the foundation, because when we have new people to the foundation, sometimes there's a lot of confusion, mostly because of her name. We are not part of the federal government. So we were created by the U.S. Congress, but we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So we are not the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we have no federal government standing or status at all. But we were created by Congress in order to assist the federal government in managing grants and in implementing their mission. And specifically, we were created for the Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So we all total currently work with about 14 different U.S. federal agencies, but we also have lots of private sector partners. And so that may be corporations, private family foundations, or even individual contributors that make up our funding base portfolio. Okay, so we're a little bit of a unique organization in that way. Other really important things to know about NFWF: if you're new to NFWF, we absolutely cannot support any advocacy, lobbying, or litigation. That's a very strict rule for us. And you also will notice that we are very focused on conservation outcomes. So throughout the day, the talk today, we're going to really be emphasizing how you can let us know how your projects are lined up to those conservation outcomes. Okay, enough about NFWF. A little bit about the program itself. This is, as I said, the second year of this program, and this has been made possible by a contribution and partnership from SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment. And so we're really excited to be able to offer this, this funding opportunity. We did get some other funding partners last year, and we hope that we will be able to offer some additional funding as well, but the main funding partner at this time is SeaWorld. It is looking to support in the aid and recovery primarily of the southern resident killer whale population. It is open. I do get questions about eligibility for other populations. It is available to the North Pacific residents population. Just be aware it's the second year and the priority population is the southern resident killer whale. Okay? Roughly 400,000 available for this cycle, and you'll see this a couple of times. This is the website on this program, and it has links to a lot of the information that I'm going to reference today. Okay? Okay, I'm going to walk through these slides again pretty quickly because all of this information is available in more detail in the RFP. It's just an opportunity for me to have kind of a visual reminder of things I might want to talk to you about. So as far as applicants, just about everybody is eligible. And so if you have a question about eligibility, let me know. There are some restrictions based on who you are in the government. If you're in the federal government, there's some budgeting restrictions as to what you can include in your budget, but for the most part, everyone is eligible. The only place that I would say for this program we need to be a little bit careful is if you are part of a mitigation. So if your project is part of a court-ordered mitigation or something that somebody is ordered to pay for, then that would not be eligible. Okay? Priority areas are pretty specific to the southern resident killer whale population, but as I said, there are some other areas that we would consider, and I can't say how competitive they would or wouldn't be because I don't know what we're going to get in on any given cycle. Please be aware that when you look at the priority section of the RFP, that some of the priorities have specific geographic sub-priorities listed with them, so you'll want to take note of that. Okay, a couple other considerations regarding the RFP that reference questions I hear a lot. Period of performance, you know, the time of start and end date. The tip sheet says about 1 to 2 years. I would say that is the norm. I put 1 to 3 in here just because, you know, depending on the project, if it was 3 years and you were able to get it in the average award time period or budget amount, you'd probably still be eligible. So we're not hard and fast on whether, you know, it has to cut off at 2 years. It's just that it usually for the budget amount here, we're not likely to go into a 3-year project. Okay, match, another question that comes up a lot, is required at a 1-to-1 ratio, okay? But it can be a cash or an in-kind donation. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and if you have specific questions on match, please do raise them, but it is required for this program. However, it can be, unlike some of the other NFWF programs, there is some flexibility. It can be federal match. Okay, so again, we can talk about that because that is a little bit unique for this program. We already talked about measurable outcomes being very important, and when we walk through the application, we'll show you where you can highlight that. And for work with marine mammals, I'm sure I don't need to tell you that permits can be an issue. And so that is something that we try to raise at the application phase right away, making sure that you are aware that you're responsible for identifying what permits are required for your project. And there is a place in the application where you need to demonstrate to us that you either have secured those permits or that it is in some way in progress and that you are aware that you need to secure them. Other things that you need to know are around data sharing. There's a couple of places in the application that we tell you about this. It's also detailed into your contract, but most of the work that the foundation supports, we try to make publicly available in some way. And so your final reports, products that you might produce as a result of funding, very well may be made publicly available. So you need to be aware of that from the onset. Okay, the priorities for funding have lots more detail in the RFP. This is just an opportunity for me to talk to you about the documents and the plans. There's lots of embedded links in the RFP that I hope you will use because we are really trying to target within these priorities specific management and research actions that have been called for. We're really trying to fill in gaps that have been in long need of funding to really move and push this thing forward. Okay, and so for the logistics side of things, applications are due July 30th. This is not correct. This is not correct. I'm going to go back to the RFP. For some reason, that is giving me some bad numbers. here we go. June 29th is today. July 14th, that's what I was looking for. July 14th, 2016 is the due date. Courtney, I'm probably going to need your help when I look back here at some of these other dates because I'm not sure why they're coming up wrong unless I've got the wrong version here.
Sure.
This is about right, though. I think we still do have a review period of August 2016. I do think we are anticipating awards announced sometime in October 2016. So the rest of that should be just the year being wrong. And then we will have, if you are awarded a project, you'll work with Courtney and I up until the point where we're working through applications in that August period of time. We'll be reviewing the project. We may be contacting you shortly thereafter or in September and saying, hey, the committee's got some questions. Can you help us rework with this? Can you address some of these questions? And so that review process does sometimes have some back and forth until we are at a point where we're ready to make decisions, and we're anticipating that's going to be sometime late September or sometime in October. If you are selected for an award at that time, you will be assigned a grants administrator, who will be yet another person at the foundation that will be working with you to coordinate your budget side of the review and to generate a contract. Okay, so Courtney and I can still be good contacts for you at the foundation. It's just that you'll get some extra people working with you as well. Once the contract is signed, we like to let people know at this stage, just because we know we have you on the line, that you can immediately start to work and request funds. It's not always intuitive for people that once they've signed the document and we've signed the document, things are official. So you can right away start work. The other tip we want to talk to you about in the hopes that you get funding is around acknowledging funding. We love it when you guys do press releases on the projects. We love it when you do PowerPoints and talk to people about your funders, and we think it's great when you put logos and things on materials. However, we need to have all of those logo use and name uses pre-approved. So if you are awarded a contract or a grant through this program and you want to put out something and acknowledge your funders, which is absolutely the way you should be going, just make sure you build in some time to contact NFWF and make sure that you've got the most up-to-date logos and it's an appropriate use. Okay? All right. That is all I had for the kind of overview of the RFP and the program and just the kind of touch points on what the program is about. So I'm going to stop here for any written in questions. And Courtney, do we have anything that we should raise at this time?
So far, we do not. Oh, wait, no, there's one that just came in. So it says, are current grantees eligible for additional projects?
Yes, current grantees are eligible. If it is a continuation project, then sometimes it happens where, because of the grant cycle, you might be finishing up something, say, in November, December, and you aren't going to, you're going to miss a whole cycle. So we totally understand that, and that's totally fine. But it should include in your narrative somewhere the progress on your existing grant. So it may be that the reporting schedule or your interim reports or whatever don't quite give us the update that's needed when we're reviewing the full proposal. So particularly if it's a continuation grant, that is very important. And we do want to make sure, I think it's like a guidance of 6 months past the announcement time period. So if we're anticipating an October announcement, you know, just budget it out that way, that you'd want to be starting within 6 months. Now, if it's just a different scope of work entirely, then that's fine. Then you don't have to have the a specific update written in, but do be aware of salaries, because that's something we're going to ask you about. You know, if the same position was funded in the previous, then we just need to be extra careful that that time is accounted for in the right way. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes. How is volunteer time valued for match?
Certainly. There are actually calculators for volunteer time. It is not based on the person's salary. So if you are lucky enough to have a brain surgeon doing spotting work for you, it doesn't mean that you get to count his hourly rate. Instead, it is the cost that you would have to pay someone, whether that was a high schooler or anybody else, to do the work that you are having a volunteer do. And so I think there are some volunteer calculators. There isn't any one that we endorse or anything, but if you look on the web, I believe that they have some kind of generic calculators for different types of tasks. But that's kind of the way to think about it. What would I have to pay someone to do this task? Okay. Other questions?
Nope, that's all we have so far.
Okay, so the next half of our time, we're going to dive into the full proposal itself. And I'm really hoping I have the right version of this PowerPoint, or we're going to have to do a quick change here. And hold on, because I don't think I do. Oh yeah, I do. Okay, we're okay, just this first one. So you're going to go to EasyGrants, NFWF.org/EasyGrants. And that is something that is linked directly from the RFP. It's also on that website I referenced earlier, NFWF.org/killer whale. So this is the main application and then later grants management system that we have at the foundation. So everything you do with us will be through this system. So if you're not already registered, that should be a high priority. And it's pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to walk through all of this stuff. And it's one of those things where you can immediately, once you register, go back in and start working on your application. You don't have to wait for any kind of pre-approval. Do note this pop-up warning. Okay, so I've talked a lot about the RFP guidelines, and I want to just take a quick minute to take you through some of those things that are available at this website. So I'm just going to jump over there real quick. So here's the home page that you will land on if you go to that that quick link. And I want to just show you where you can access some of the information. So our request for proposals is right here. Another thing you might find very useful is that there is the grant slate from last year, little summaries of the projects that were awarded. Gives you a good sense of the flavor of projects that we were interested in, we're competitive. And then if you go to this request for proposals link, it's going to have the full RFP available here and all of these links to the different documents that are referenced. But I also want to draw your attention right up here to the tip sheet, because this is a relatively new thing that the foundation makes available to applicants. And this is what it is. It's something that you can just print out if you're interested in having something that's a side-by-side copy as you're filling out the application. But really, this is a reference for the entire application that I'm about to walk you through. So the detail on how to fill something out, what something means is here, and there are also examples. So one of the things I'm going to reference, as we walk through this are, these different areas of character limits, but examples on what a title should look like, things like that. But also the metrics. This is the one area, if you read nothing else of this tip sheet that Courtney and I have labored intensively over, please do this one thing for me and read this metrics section. It will save you time and it'll save us time if we are able to award your project, okay? So please at least read this metrics section. It will really help you out. Okay, with that, let's go back and walk through some of the other things available. There are financial documents. We will not be briefing you on the financial side of the application because Courtney and I are program staff, and the financial documents change with the Office of Management and Budget requirements, and so they keep those things updated. They're the ones that do that review, and so we will just embed in our tip sheets and in our RFPs where you can get that information, because we are less qualified to train you on that because it's constantly being updated. Same with the indirect cost policies. If you have not applied to the foundation in the last couple of years, things have changed, so please do take a look at that. And then we already referenced that there are some embedded planning documents. Okay, so you have logged in and you're going to jump to your home page. If you have never applied to the foundation before using the Easy Grant system, you're just going to have these, well, maybe even just this one button here to click. If you have worked with the foundation before at least once or submitted something, then you may have a number of different tasks or applications or grants referenced. I just want to orientate you to this page a little bit because it trips some people up. When you go through the initial part of the application process that I'm going to walk you through, it will eventually kick you back here when you are ready to start completing your full proposal. And you want to pay attention to this part of the task. So it'll say something like, you know, killer whale is the funding cycle name, and then you'll click on the full proposal, and that's how you enter into the application to complete it. And you can come back. You can save and stop and come back and work on it more. It's not something you have to complete all in one sitting. Once you have submitted it, so right now we have an incomplete, not submitted, and it tells you when your due date is. Once you have submitted your full proposal, if you would like to share it with someone else, then you can come over to the View PDF. Sometimes people get tripped up and they want to keep clicking that to go back in and finish their application, and then they get frustrated because it doesn't seem to work, and then they start a new application. So I just wanted to point that out. Even though it's a button, it's not going to help you until you've actually submitted your application. Then it's just something that helps reference what you submitted. You're going to want to work over here on the link. Okay, enough about that. Let's just click on Application for Funding, and you're going to be given the list of currently active funding opportunities. And you'll see that killer whale research and conservation is listed here, and you can just have the radio button and push continue. Note that we also have the reference here if you need to get to that website that we just walked you through. Okay, once you have selected and it'll tell you, is this the program you want to apply for? You say, oh yes, definitely. Then you will be pushed into this eligibility quiz. This is really quick, but it's really important that you read these 3 questions and make sure that you completely understand that there is a matching requirement, that we will be posting materials on the website, and that you are eligible to submit, because these are things that we track as an organization in case it just resolves problems of people saying that they weren't aware. Okay, so once you've addressed these questions, you push submit. You will either be eligible or you will be ineligible. If you are ineligible because of your response to one of these questions and you feel that you should still be able to submit an application, please call me and we will talk that through. Okay? All right, but if you are eligible, you'll get kicked back to that task list, and you'll click that link for full proposal that I showed you earlier, and then you will be presented with this page. And I just want to orientate you again to some of the things on the Easy Grant system. So first of all, it has a lovely reminder up here as to when this is due. You'll note that it's due at 11:59 p.m. But I'd like to just put a little shout out that Courtney and I will not necessarily be at the other side of our phones to answer your questions at 11:50. I do try to have my phone near me on application due dates, but don't expect us to be there after business hours on this day. Okay, try to get this done a little bit earlier. The other thing to pay attention to is the Easy Grants ID. This is your indicator both for the application and then if you are awarded, it will be your grants identifier as well. So it really helps us to look up your project and to know where it is in the database if you have that number available. We can find it in other ways, but if you have that, it's just good to know where that is. Okay, and then you have navigation. So you have navigation both on this side and you have navigation through these links here. So what you'll see is the main pages of the application on the left, but then I also want to highlight that there is a frequently asked question here, and the help bar is actually a really nice feature throughout this online system because the help is customized to the page. So if you're on the budget page, the help section will be on the budget page. So I wanted to let you be aware of that. There's also a help desk. You can't see it here on my screenshot, but there's a help desk email here. It's not, and a phone number. It's not live, but they usually are responsive within 24 hours. Okay? And that's if you need help on navigating the system. Okay, so you're going to see a status check here. People always ask me, how can this be complete? I haven't even started. And that's because this is on a validation system. So your contact and organization information is really general. It's, you know, basically pretty self-explanatory. It's your name, it's your email, that kind of thing. But your matching contributions is validating on the match ratio that's required for the program. So if you have at this point in the process requested $0 and you've pledged 0 match, you meet the one-to-one matching requirement, and that's why it's listed as complete. Once you start working on the application, that will change. The permits and approvals section lists as complete because there are some projects for which you don't need a permit. It's not required, and so if we were to validate that you had to put something in there, then it would you'd never let you submit. And so this is just an opportunity to give you a quick skim of how far along you are in the process. Okay? Let's, like I said, we're going to kind of skip over contact information, organization information. That's pretty self-explanatory. So we're going to go right to the project information page. These main fields here, and then there's one field in the project location that I'll point out, are, and that's the project description, are the what I call the spreadsheet fields. So these will show up as part of the printout in your PDF, but their main purpose is to populate a spreadsheet and to use that when we talk to Congress about what projects we're funding, the general public, etc. So these are probably the most used data fields to communicate about your project. But we need to remember that these are fields that need to be short, and they need to be no technical language. They need to be available kind of to a general public audience. So it's important that you know that for data-based purposes, we may need to edit some of the things that you put into these fields, not from a scope of work substance, but from a standpoint of being able to communicate in a standardized way. But also, the tip sheet has examples and guidance, and I really ask you to please use these to try to get these as close as they can in your own words. There's also guidance on the start and end date. I get questions about when the start date should be. I'm not going to go over that, but that is in the tip sheet, so please do take a look if you have questions about that. Okay, so not going to go over the project location because, again, that's fairly self-explanatory. But the map is a relatively new feature for those of you, even if you're somewhat familiar with NFWF. So because it's new, you'll note that there's a lot of red text. And, you know, I got to give the folks that have worked on this system a lot of credit because they work very closely with applicants. You'll notice that you get a survey after you've submitted applications, after you've submitted final reports, because we really do use your feedback to continually improve. And they really try to lead you to water and they try to provide lots of help and lots of resources and step-by-step instructions. And the red text reflects those things that have been in bold but people still ignored. So this is here for you, to help you and to save you time. And so what I'm going to do is just go over the things that I feel are a little bit less intuitive for you even when you read these instructions. Okay, I'm not going to go through the instructions step by step. So to me, the thing that's the least intuitive is that there are 3 different ways that you can map your project. That does not mean that we want you to map your project 3 different ways. It means you have 3 different options. You will choose one of them. And the way that you choose those options is by clicking on this bar. Okay, so the first one's open for you, and that is the upload a shapefile. So your first option is, if you already have some shapefile from some other project or some other resource that you can just upload into the system, you're done. You just push browse and, you know, pretty like any other kind of system. You can upload that information and then validate it at the bottom of this page and you're good to go. But what may not be intuitive is that there are 2 other options here. And so if you select by geography by clicking on that bar, then other options will become available to you. And so here is like embedded shapefiles that apply to some of our projects, so that might help you get there a little bit faster if you know that you're going to be doing restoration work in a particular watershed for water quality or something of that nature. Then clicking on the watershed radial button might help, and then you can zoom in and there might be one that applies to you and you can select that, and that would be, you know, a really quick way to do it. For most of the projects, if you click on custom area, you're going to want to zoom in to where you're going to be working and draw a freehand polygon. And like I said, there's very specific instructions on how to do that, so I'm not going to go over those at this time. But for me, the hard thing was knowing how to get here because there was nothing that really said click on the bar. Okay? All right, so we've just completed map. Now we get to really the heart of the application, and that's the uploads. My biggest words of advice are to not save the uploads to the end. The things that really end up being the time suck are the things that you are probably not responsible for producing. So Board of Trustees, GAAP, IRS 990, audit, calculating your indirect, those things are what catch people at the 11th hour with their financial department unprepared. So get that information to whoever is appropriate in your organization right away so that you're ready to upload those when the time comes. 2 things I wanted to point out to you here, again for that validation reason. These are listed, the indirect rate agreement and photos are listed as not required because they aren't for every single project. It's circumstantial. So if you are going to claim indirect rate, then you absolutely are required to have your indirect rate agreement. Okay, unless you are doing a project that really a photo doesn't apply, like you're convening a meeting or something. I really do want you to have photos, and that's part of your narrative template. So just wanted to draw your attention that even though it says it's not required in those 2 instances, it really is. For the other ones, they aren't required. If it's something that you think really enhances your project, you are certainly encouraged to do so. Okay, the way that this works as far as an upload process, you're going to get a download pick list which will look very much like this. You select the one that you're uploading, browse to your hard drive, and then start the upload. 2 other things to note here, you'll see that there are templates. We would like you to use our template, especially for the narrative, which I will show you in a minute. And you can save it onto your hard drive, work on it at your leisure, and then upload it as part of this process. Okay, so the narrative looks a little bit different, not if you applied last year, but if you've applied previous. So I just want to draw your attention to a couple of things. We're trying to get folks to use the formatting in the narrative to help them build a structure by, like using a bulleted list or something of their activities so that they can use that same structure when they do their reporting. So either interim reports and their final reports. So think about that structure, and there's some guidance in there for that. If you're looking at a multi-year project, make sure that you include implementation milestones and an implementation timeline. It's a requirement for a multi-year. We are going to talk about metrics in a second. There are some metrics that we want to capture and track for the program. There are other metrics that are part of your kind of overall monitoring plan of your success of your individual project. That is where we want to include them in here. So put those tracking metrics as they relate to your outcomes in your narrative. Don't try to capture them specifically in the activities and metrics section of the application. That's a big pitfall. Project team and photos, pretty self-explanatory. There is a section for other, but you don't need to attach large bodies of information here. I think the narrative for this program is limited to 6 pages. Okay? Couple of tips. I'm just going to fly through these here. These are the kind of things that you nod your head to. Well, of course. Your reviewers are going to have some familiarity with killer whales. You don't need to spend 2 paragraphs explaining that this is a dire situation. Your reviewers will be very familiar with that. But what you do need to be able to do is be very specific to your project and what you are proposing to do and how that clearly links to the threats or a specific plan or activities. Oh goodness, just jumped. Oh, it's easy grants. Okay, sorry about that. I timed out. Why are you doing this? There we go. Reference models or past experience. If we may not be familiar with you as an organization or the particular strategy that you are proposing, so those help. And if there's a significant risk to your project implementation or a hurdle that you're going to have to overcome, don't just ignore that, because if anything, that will ding you. Your reviewers will say, well, gosh, they're just completely ignorant to this huge factor. So it's much better to state it and show how you're going to try to mitigate that risk. Look for sustainability. If it's something that is a new activity or a new salary position or something that's going to make this big impact for 1 year, but yet in order to achieve the true outcome it needs to be sustained, well, what's going to happen after the funding is gone? And this is not a perpetual grant program, so we have to be thinking about from the beginning the sustainability. Look for realistic goals and how you are going to get there within the grant time period. I think some applicants feel that they need to have big numbers and promise a lot, and that will make them more competitive. But if your goals come across as really unrealistic to people who are familiar with the kinds of things that need to be done, then it will actually hurt you more than will help you. Okay, so this is that metrics section that's next on our list, and so I want to spend a little bit of time there. Mostly I've already showed you the place in the tip sheet that I really want you to read, and that will answer all of your questions. But just to visually show you, when you get to this metrics page, you're going to use the drop down to select killer whale, which will really kind of be your only option, but you have to push select. When you do, then the metrics for this program will populate. At this time, if there is one that applies to you, you'll push the Add button, which will allow you to fill in the values. I'll show you that in a second. And then you should also come back and add notes from the notes link, so to describe how this metric will be applied specifically in your project. So when you push add, you'll get to this and it will tell you, here put what is our current, our baseline, whatever you want to think about it, situation, value, and where do you hope to be at the end of the period of performance of the grant. Okay? There is a qualifier here on every value page. If you follow that table, however, you will have an easier time filling out this section because it's all in one place and you can see which ones apply to you. You will also note in the metric section that I don't want you to use every metric. Again, this is a metric for the program, not an evaluation of your project. So if you shouldn't feel like you need to have a value for each of these metrics. Most projects won't because the metrics are looking for different types of projects or different types of activities. So the last thing you should know about the metrics section is that it will not let you submit if you have a metric listed but it doesn't have a value. So once you have completed the metrics that the 1 or 3 or whatever you have that are relevant to your project, they will turn to a green check. Anything that still has a red X and is not applicable to your project, then you need to click on the box here and push go for delete. Okay, so you have to remove the ones you're not going to use, and then you can push continue. All right. Next section on our list is the budget. Again, as I mentioned, we're not going to go through any of this stuff in detail other than to say that it looks very new and different for those of you who were here even last year. Green pluses help you open up windows to fill this out. And I just really want to draw your attention to the indirect policy. It's probably the biggest slowdown in the contracting process is that people do not complete the indirect appropriately. So please do use that guidance for your assistance. Okay, we have just 2 categories left here. The first is matching funds. This gives you the ability to add various multiple sources of match, and you have just a few fields to fill out here. And it also allows you to have status, so whether you've just intend to apply, or you've already submitted an application, or you've already received a pledge of volunteer time or boat rental or whatever it is, we want to know about that. If you have a lot of your match that is status intend to apply or application submitted, then you might want to put more match, you might want to list more match in here than the minimum 1-to-1, unless you're feeling pretty confident about that, because we would look at that as reviewers and say, ooh, well, gee, their match might be a little bit shaky. They're kind of putting all their eggs in one basket and they haven't even applied yet. So unless you're feeling really confident about that, we would encourage you to put a little bit more in than you need. Okay, and then the last section is permits and approvals. As I said, may not apply to every project, but reviewers are going to have a good sense of whether or not a permit is required. And so if you have not listed a permit that is likely to be needed, then that will kind of communicate to the reviewers that you're not really aware of what it's going to take to implement your project, and that might be a little bit of a risky investment. So pay attention to the permit section. Okay, those are all the pages of the application, and so the last thing that you will be brought to is the validation page, which is the review and submit page. You'll notice it looks kind of familiar to where you started, but it has some other features. So here is where, if it has been completed totally to what is needed for validation purposes, it will give you a green check. If it is considered incomplete, it will list all the things that are required, and you can go back and fix those things until you get a green check. Once you have gotten greens all the way down, you can view the PDF at this point to see what it's going to look like to reviewers. And then once you have all green checks, there will be a button here. So you see it will not even allow you to submit until you have full validation. So once you have gotten those greens, make sure you push the submit button. I think we get at least 3 every year that forget. They've done everything but this, and then they miss the deadline. So please make sure you push that submit button. And that is the full proposal application. So I'm sure we have some questions at this point because I know I glossed over a lot of things. So Courtney, I will turn it over to you for written questions first, and then if we have remaining time, we will open it up to the phones.
So we don't have anything just yet, but I'll give everybody a moment or two to type just in case.
Okay. I'm happy to go back to any particular section like, match or something and really look at that more closely, or the metrics. I wanted to make sure we got through the material, and so I did reference help quite a bit, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask a question even though I said that the answer is somewhere else. I'm happy to try to address them now. Okay, well, I'm going to open it up to the phones. Does anybody, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put all phones or hands down. If you would like to be taken off mute and ask a question, you feel free to do so at this time, and we'll just kind of monitor that and take you off mute as we go. While we're kind of giving people time for that, Courtney and I are available to answer any questions about, oh, well, what do you think about this, or this is what I'm thinking about. So at any time, if you have those kinds of questions, please feel free to email us or give us a call. Sooner, of course, is a little bit better. Try not to wait till the last minute. Okay, we are getting in some questions now.
Yes, we have some now.
So I'll start working through some of these. So other populations may be included. Would Biggs killer whales be included as well? I gotta be honest with you. I mean, this is the second year of funding, and so I think there is a lot to be done with southern residents. I think that, then if you expand the bubble a little bit to northern Pacific, it's possible we could fund outside of southern residents this year, but for the second year of the program to move away considerably from the target population, I think would likely be a stretch. So you need to budget your time accordingly on that. I just want to be as candid as possible. For the map section, if a project is primarily lab-based, yes, good question. No, don't ever leave a map blank because it's a validation thing. What I would do is put a point for where your lab is. I'm trying to think that through a little bit, just kind of thinking out loud here. So that would be one way to do it. Another way to do it is if you had, depending on what lab work you're doing, if it's lab work around salmon, put the run in. If it's lab work around southern residents of a certain time of year, you could put that in. Do I want the full range of southern residents? Probably not. So if it's really, if you really can't find a way to connect it geographically, then I guess I'd put a point on the map for where your lab is. Okay. For personnel, if not certain about whether a student might be available, so may need to hire a contractor, How can that uncertainty be honestly represented? Okay. I don't think it can. I'm sure that's not a satisfactory answer. We don't have allowances for contingencies in the budget, so it's not okay to, just put we may need something. And clearly a contractor is going to cost a lot different than a student, right? So if you are pretty darn sure, based on historical experience, that you're going to be able to find a student that is interested in working on marine mammals, then I'd budget in for a student. But if you, based on experience, are a little bit iffy that you're going to be able to get a student with the right qualifications to do the highly technical work that you're looking to do, then I'd budget in for that contractor. So I'm sorry that is probably not a satisfactory answer to your question, but I just don't think that there is a way to fudge that. Any other questions? As we're waiting for folks that might be writing in, to let you know that as you drop off from the webinar, you will be presented an exit survey. Please fill that out. It really helps us. Courtney and I will take a look at that. I don't even think it specifically ties to your name. That's not what we're interested in anyway. What we're interested in knowing is what was useful, what put you to sleep, and what would you really have wished that we had covered and we didn't. So, even things like the timing, was it the right time to give this presentation based on when we announce the RFP and when the due date is. So that kind of feedback is very valuable to us. Another question has come in. Do all students and contractors have to be US or Canadian citizens? In other words, can you include payment to contractors from abroad? Oh, that is an excellent question because that is changing. I want to say no restrictions at this time. Looking at the color of the money, I don't think that we would have to deal with OMB requirements in the same way. So I would say go ahead and put in for what you need and who's the best, most appropriate. And then if we need to, we'll cross that bridge. But we'd know that before contracting. So I'd say go ahead and put in for what makes the most sense to complete the scope of work. Because I'm not sure that you'd have a major stumbling block there. Are there web browsers to avoid? Yes, there are. Courtney, help me with this one. Is it
Yes.
Internet Explorer?
Yes, it is.
Is that the one that we don't like? Yeah, okay. Not everybody has a problem with Internet Explorer, but usually if there is a problem, it's because of IE. It has something to do with the versions or whatever. So very good question. That'll help people. So that pop-up blocker is one thing, and then staying away from Internet Explorer is another one. Excellent question. Others? If you have something that's very specific to your grant, you can also reach out to us offline. That is fine. We have another one that's come in. What kinds of activities to reduce stressors will NFWF support? Oh, goodness. Well, we have the three main priorities. So when you talk about stressors, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. We're focused in on prey, food abundance. We're focused in on water quality, and then just some kind of other disturbance like noise and vessels. So I guess I'd look to the RFP there, and we reference some specific management plans which have specific actions in them. And if you still aren't finding the clarity of the types of activities after kind of perusing through that, then go ahead and give me a call and we can talk through a little bit more about what you might be thinking about. Okay, just scanning through. Other thoughts? We're coming to the end of our time, so I'll entertain one or two more if somebody has something, but otherwise you can see our email here. The reason we don't put phone is just because, quite frankly, email is going to be the fastest way to get a hold of us. We're kind of on the phone a lot, but we will get back to you and set up a call if needed as soon as possible. Okay, well, we haven't seen anything come in very recently here, so I'm going to call it. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope that it saves you time as you're filling out the application and makes that process a little bit easier for you, and also gives you some guidance into the types of things that you should highlight and that we're looking for in these applications. So thank you very much. Good luck to everyone, and we hope to be hearing from you. Take care. Bye-bye.